Hey, we're doing a series this semester, as you can see up there. It is called, we're doing biblical characters. And it's basically God's truths through real life. It's the truths that God communicates through lives. We all love the biblical stories, but it's so much more than just a story about somebody's life. There's so much there if we're willing to look at it. And so today, what I wanted to take a look at, a person that I wanted to take a look at, her name is Deborah. She's a woman. She's a real woman. Yeah. Are there any non-real women? I don't know. I don't want to meet them if there are. If you happen to have a Bible and turn over to Judges chapter 4, you'll meet Deborah. And when you read the story, do you know what this means? How many of you know what this statement means? No glass ceilings with God. Anybody know what that means? Yeah, it's a very American statement, I think. Very Western. But basically the idea is that if you go into corporate America, there's always this floor. It's a special floor. If you've ever been over to President Kim's office, you'll know when you go up under this floor, there's two glass doors that are locked to some people. So you can't just pass through there. You have to have a reason for going in there. So in any big corporation, like at the one I worked for at USA in San Antonio, there's this floor. It's in our building. It was a half floor. It's kind of, it wasn't connected to everything else. You had to go up this escalator to get to this floor, and it's got glass doors and everything's glass, and all the offices are surrounded by glass, and they in this picture the floors are glass. Now you could see this floor. You could see the people sometimes. But if you're a woman, you could never get there. You could never get an office up there because it was a man's world, and it was the leaders of the corporations in the United States. So they called that the glass ceiling. You can be a woman, you can be productive, you can work hard, you can be successful, you can be smart, you can work as hard as you want, but you'll never get through the glass ceiling. That's what that meant, the glass floor. So as you read through Judges and you come across this story of Deborah in chapter 4, my immediate thought was, wow, with God there are no glass ceilings. There's no place God will not take a woman who's following him, according to his, where he wants you to be. It's true of the man, obviously, but it's true with women as well. So I just want to read this story, not all of it. I want to relate some of it just by story because that's the way it's kind of told. But as you know, this story takes place early on in the book of Judges. Judges is a story filled with constant back and forth with Israel. What's happened is that Joshua has led the people into the land. They've conquered a lot of the peoples, but not all of them. There are some peoples left in the land. God left them there on purpose to test the Israelites, to see if they would truly be faithful to him and love him. And so what happened was the people of Israel began to intermarry with the Canaanites and the Philistines and all these other people, and to take on their gods. So instead of, when they came into the land, being so faithful to God, we'll worship God and nobody else, and we won't intermarry. We'll stay a pure people of God. That's what God wanted and asked of them. Instead, now they're intermarrying, and now they're pulling in the gods, as you saw in the story of Gideon, which is the very next chapter in this book, or the 2 chapters later in this book. Gideon, the hero of this story, has a Baal and an Asherah in his home. So that's what's happened with the people. And it says in chapter 2 that the angel of the Lord came to the people of Israel and said, you know what? I made a covenant with you. I cleared out the people before you. I told you I was always going to be with you. And what have you done in return? You've abandoned me. And so, you know what? I'm going to let life get tough with you. Now, there was an interview a while back. There was a horrible school accident in the United States, a big shooting, and they had, I think it was Billy Graham's granddaughter. Was it his daughter or granddaughter? I think it was his daughter, maybe. But anyway, they were interviewing her, and this commentator was asking Billy Graham's daughter, why do you think God allowed this to happen? Why do you think that God let this horrible shooting take place and all of these people get killed? And what she said was very interesting. She said, you know what? We kicked God out of the schools in 1964. But now you're asking why he didn't protect. And it's because you kicked God out. How was he going to protect if he wasn't there? And so in relationship to this story, what we see in Judges is that these people have abandoned God. And God is allowing these trials to come back in, not to devastate the people. They're a people of promise, but to bring the people back. He's always looking to bring the people back. And these instances where the Israelites become slaves, where they become slaves to the people of the gods that they have taken on. If you can imagine, they've taken on the gods from the Philistines, and all of a sudden the Philistines are the ones who are crushing them. God, they might look to God and say, God, why have you abandoned us? And God says, why did you take on the God of the Philistines? You love him, you want him, you have him. And see what he does for you. Well, that's the story of Judges. So we come to Deborah in chapter 4. And it says, after Ehud died, he was a previous judge, the Israelites once again did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, the king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Haggim. Because he had 900 iron chariots, he had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years, and they cried to the Lord for help. Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at the time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramoth and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites came to her to have their disputes decided. She went to Barak. I'll read that in a minute. But I just want to say, here you see, in the midst of this turmoil, and in some ways we're in a world of turmoil right now, there is a woman. There is a woman in the hill country of Ephraim who knows what she's about. And she knows where she's going. And she knows what she's doing. And why she's there. And she is a pillar and a rock in a community that's being devastated. Can we go back to my slide, please? And she's a prophetess. First, what type of a prophetess? Well, you could say there's different types of prophets. So you might say, I'm a prophet because I'm preaching. But it's not the same type of a prophet that we're talking about back then. She is literally speaking the words of God. God is speaking through Deborah. That's the type of prophet that we're talking about. She's also a judge in the sense that people are coming to her to have their cases decided. The people are coming for justice. And she is deciding the cases, kind of like Moses did. You remember Moses came into the land, and all the people, he would sit in the day, and all the people would line up to have their cases heard. So he would judge them. And then after a while, his father-in-law came along and said, Moses, what are you doing? You're holding up the line. Assign judges to stand in your place. So he assigned 70 judges throughout the land to hear the cases of the people. And who knows, but maybe she's one of these 70 judges that's judging in the land. The thing that's different is that you don't hear about any other judges. The only one you hear about in the land is Deborah. And interestingly enough, Deborah is judging as a prophet, as a prophetess. She is speaking the words of God. Now, what does a prophetess do? Well, through a prophetess will tell you, because God is telling her what the meaning of the things that have happened is. Like something from their past has happened. You want to know why it's happened. The prophetess can hear the word of God and tell you what it means. Another thing that a prophetess can do is when you bring a case before her and two people are telling both sides of the story, who knows what's true? A prophetess can actually know what's true because God sees all things and God is speaking to her. And then finally, a prophetess is one who... Our prophet or a prophetess is one who can foretell the future, who knows what's going to happen in the future because God is telling her what's going to happen in the future. So that's what a prophet is and a judge. Here's Deborah. She is a prophetess and she's a judge. She's judging the people. Deborah is a woman of God, and God has the last word on a woman's place. I so love this. I so love this. God has the last word on a woman's place. She is a woman of God. She's standing with God. And Deborah is not self-made. She's divinely enabled. You know, we a lot of us, we have desires and goals, don't we? I want to be successful. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be all these things. But Deborah is divinely made. She couldn't fake speaking the words of the Lord. She actually would have been stoned for being a false prophet. She couldn't fake being a prophetess without being false. So here's a woman who's divinely enabled to do the work that she does. And because she's divinely enabled, there's no hindrance, there's no blockades, there's no doors in front of her. And so I think what I'm trying to say, not very well, is that be in the Lord, women, and wherever God wants you to be is where you will go if you're willing to follow Him. Right? There are no glass ceilings. And if you are a divinely enabled woman, there's no place you won't go that God wants you to be. Now, we're always worried. We're always filled with fears. I hear this all the time, men and women. And I'll show you what it looks like. You know, I want to be a small group leader, but the people in power won't let me. Or I want to, I want to be a deacon of this ministry, but the people in power won't let me. But if you're divinely enabled, will not the Lord open the door in His own time? And who would stop the door from being open? Would it be a pastor or a preacher or an elder or anybody else? Who would stop this door from being open? So a lot of times, what we have to do in those instances, say you feel a burden to be a small group leader, or you feel a burden to be a deacon leader, or whatever type of a leader that you want, and you feel like there's a group that's out there that's stopping you from doing it. They're holding you back. They're not letting you through. Is to remember who's able to open the doors. God is able to open the doors. And He will open any door He chooses, and nobody will stop it. Nobody will stop the door from being open when He's ready to open it. So it's a matter of trust, isn't it? Is God God? Is He enabling you? Is He calling you? Is He giving you a passion for it? Who will stop it? You don't have to push the door open. The door's going to swing wide open for you because God's the one opening it. Right? All right. Next slide, please. She's a woman of the people. It's so fascinating. Of all the judges of all the judges that we see in this book, Deborah is different. Number one, because she's a woman. Number two, because she's a prophetess. Number three, because She's already leading at the time that the trouble begins. All of the other judges arise out of trouble. Some invading army or some crushing defeat or some terrible event has happened, and all of a sudden God raises a man to be the hero or to be the judge, the one who's going to free Israel or help Israel out of some situation. Deborah's already there. She's already a prophetess. She's already judging. She's the only one in the book that's already leading. Now, you could say, where are the men leaders in this book? And I don't know where the men leaders are. But I do know this. The people know who's leading. The people are seeking justice and mercy. She's not in town. She's out in the countryside. She's got a palm tree. It's called Deborah's palm tree. And she sits under her palm tree in between two towns, and she judges the people. The people come from miles around for her to speak, to her to tell them, to her to make judgments on their cases. Why? Number one, because they know she's speaking the words of God. And number two, because they're seeking justice and mercy. And she's the only place they're finding it right now. So the people are looking, they're longing, they're hungry for justice and mercy. Now, if your goal is leadership, it's the wrong goal. God's goal's mercy and justice. And that's what Deborah is doing. Deborah's goal is not leadership. Deborah's goal is God's goal. Mercy and justice. And when you get in line with God's goals of mercy and justice, not judgment, but salvation, guess what? The people come. The people follow. Because they long for justice and mercy. And they'll get it wherever they want it, right? There's a saying in the United States that for fathers, this is what they say in anytime you get a father training. A father will love his daughter, or his daughter will find love someplace else. It's a rule of life. Daughters need love. And if a father won't give it to him, she'll find it. Because she's got to. Here's a rule of the people. People need justice and mercy. And if a man leader won't give it to them, they're going to find it wherever they can. God's goals. We all need to line up with God's goals. Social and culture. I love this. How do you change a person's culture? How do you go against social norms? With God? God gets through these things. Look at this. Deborah is speaking the words of God. She's speaking words of justice and mercy. And you know what? All the social barriers are gone. All the cultural norms are meaningless because the people are looking for justice and mercy. And she's got it because she's with God. The social stuff, the cultural norms, they're just covers. They're covers. They're a security blanket. But when people find the real thing, justice and mercy, they'll come. Next slide, please. Deborah, I'm having to cut a lot of stuff out because of the time, so forgive me for this. Deborah, a woman of confidence. She knows the voice of God. Now she's already leading, right? She knows the voice of God. Do you know the voice of God? Why don't you know the voice of God? Now, when you were in your mother's womb, do you know that in a mother's womb, a baby knows from the mother's womb, responds differently when a father speaks? Did you know that? A baby in the womb of a mother knows the father's voice. voice and responds. When did we lose it? When did we stop knowing our Father's voice? Here's the point. Deborah is living a life listening to the voice of God. She's living a life listening to it. She knows it. She hears it. She probably hears it a lot. She's listening. If you don't know the Father's voice, maybe it could be because you're not listening. Maybe because you're not practicing. Now, you know how somebody, you know your friends, right? You know your family. My brother has a certain walk. He has a certain shape, rear end. Not that I'm looking at his rear end all the time, but when my brother lives in San Antonio, Texas, but I'm telling you, if I saw my brother walking across this campus and I was 2 football fields away and I was looking at him from behind, I would know immediately it's my brother. What? Because of the way he walks, because of the shape of his body, because I have seen my brother so much, because I've watched him walk so often, I know what he looks like. Now, when you listen to the voice of God and you spend a lot of time with him, you learn what his voice sounds like. I'm telling you, Deborah knows the voice of God. She's not being tricked. She's not wondering whether it's the voice of God. Deborah knows the voice of God. And you can too. You'll know the voice of God. I know the voice of God in my life. Every morning I wake up, and if I'm not jogging with Craig, or after I jog with Craig, I spend time in reading God's Word and praying. And I almost always do it this way because I've learned how to hear God's voice. The way I do it is I do my normal reading. I'm reading through Joel. And so every morning I do my normal reading, and then I spend time quietly listening. Not talking, listening. And do you know what God does in my mind? He begins to show me things. It's not an audible voice. It's somewhere between here and here. I can't describe it. But I know the Lord speaks to me. And what he has to say, I'd better listen up because I'm going to need it for that day. Or for next day, or for the day after that. I know his voice in my life. Now, I'm 45 years old, and I've been practicing since I was about 26. I know the Lord's voice, and so can you. And if you're discouraged because you read the Bible and then you close your eyes for a minute and you're bored after 30 seconds and you don't get anything out of it, there is a way to go about this. And come to my class, I'll teach you. You can hear the voice of God in your life. Deborah does. And I doubt people were teaching her. It's right here. This is the voice. When you read this and then you be quiet and let God speak into your mind or into your heart, you'll hear him. And at first it might take a little while and you might not be exactly sure, but I'm telling you, after 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, you won't get up in the morning that you are longing to go and spend that time with the Lord. I am telling you that that in the place that I am at, I won't last long in this place unless I'm spending time listening to God's voice. And the reason why is because I begin to speak my voice. And my voice is not intelligent. My voice is not wise. My voice is not knowing. My voice does not heal. My voice is completely devoid of any power or meaning. It's only God's voice that matters. If you come to me for counseling, I will not counsel you. I'll lead you to Jesus Christ, who will counsel you. If you're injured, I will not try to heal you. I'll lead you to Jesus Christ, who will heal you. There's no power in me. It's all in Jesus. It's all in God's Word. Okay? She knows God's voice by practice. Day by day by day, she's listening. Her life reflects the voice she listens to. What voice are you listening to? What voices are you listening to? Lady Gaga. I was born from an egg. Don't judge me. I'm just here. Is that the voice you're listening to? Are you listening to the voice that says if you go to sleep before 3 o'clock in the morning and you're not studying, then you're nobody? Is that the voice you're listening to? Are you listening to the voice that says if you don't get a 4.0 like that other student, that you're lost cause, that you're a failure? Is that the voice you're listening to? And I'll tell you how you can tell what voice you're listening to. Look at how you're living. It proves it out. Are you filled with fear? Do you walk around feeling like a failure? Are you always afraid, deathly afraid of the next grade? It'll tell you what voice you're listening to. Deborah's not listening to those voices. She's not listening to all the male voices that are telling her she shouldn't or she can't. She's listening to God's voice that says, yes, you can. Her life reflects the voices she listens to. There is unity. There is unity between her faith and her life. Do you see? There's unity between her faith and her life. Have you ever met a Christian who's always at, dawn prayer service, but then is the worst person to live with in the dorms? They're so judgmental, and everything is theirs, and don't touch mine, and it's your tough luck. Have you ever met a person like that? There is no connection between what they're reading in here, the voice of God, and what they're living out. They're a deacon in the ministry, and they're at the bar on Friday night. There's a total disconnect between what they say they believe and what they're actually living out. Deborah's not like that. What she says, she walks. She hears a word from the Lord, and she calls this guy named Barak out of the hill country, and she walks up to Barak and she says, it doesn't say this in the NIV, it's in the Hebrew and in King James Version. There's a question. She goes, didn't the Lord tell you to go fight Sisera? It's a question. So she's a prophetess. God has told her, I told Barak to go fight, and he's not going. So she walks up to Barak and she goes, didn't the Lord tell you that you're supposed to go fight? Take 10,000 men and go fight. And he goes, I'll go if you go. Now here's the big war hero. I'm not going without the woman. That's the war hero. What does Deborah say? Now remember, Deborah's married and she's got children. Deborah goes, I'll go. But because of the way you're acting, God's taking the victory away from you and is going to give it to a woman. And that's exactly what happened. Sisera is killed by a woman, not by Barak. There's a unity between her faith and her life. She walks in confidence. Next, I think that's it, right? I think we're out of time, too. We are going to, after I pray, there's not going to be any music. We're going to get up, and by your teams, we're going to go out to the field back behind here, and we're going to do a video on YouTube. We're going to put it on YouTube, and it's just going to be something to encourage Japan, the people of Japan. Okay? So let me pray. We'll all get up, and we're going to head on over.